Welcome to the marketplace. Coming up this afternoon, the Social Security and National Insurance Trust, in consultation with the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, increases monthly pensions upwards by 15% for the year 2024.
It's my singular honor to announce to you that we came to a rate of 15% for 2024. That's going to apply to all pensions in payment.
Coming up, World Bank projects Ghana's economy to grow by 2.8% at the end of this year. Plus, National Youth Employment Authority rolls out a new module to create employment for 20,000 youth in private enterprises.
The recruitment of the 20,000 will not be the end of unemployment in Ghana. But at least, my friends from the media, we would have given hope to some young man and woman.
My name is Daryl. Kwawu. Thanks for joining us. Details coming up. And thanks for staying with us, everyone. The Social Security and National Insurance Trust, SNIT, in consultation with the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, has increased monthly pensions upwards by 15% for the year 2024. This is in line with the National Pensions Act. James Eshen has more.
Social Security and National Insurance Trust said approximately 70% of all pensioners across the country are expected to receive some 15% as an effective indexation rate. This is expected to cost the trust some 697 million Ghana cedis.
The long-term sustainability of the scheme. You don't want to eat all your eggs so that you don't have chickens, going forward. So we need to make sure that the scheme is protected. It's in existence to be able to continue to pay pension or benefits when they fall due. So that's very, very crucial. Now, having considered all these four factors, ladies and gentlemen, it's my singular honor to announce to you that we came to a rate of 15% for 2024. That's going to apply to all pensions in payment.
Now, the total indexation rate for lowest earning pensioners will be 36.37%.
We project the wage inflation, and this year the wage inflation has been projected to be 20%. That is one factor that we take into account in arriving at the indexation rate for a particular year. The number two factor is to also find the CPI, what we call the inflation. So the projection for this year, 2024, was set at 23.16, and I must add quickly that the statistician yesterday, the government statistician yesterday announced inflation for ending year December 2023 to be 23.2.
Now, the trust said the average monthly pension payout for 2024 is projected to increase from 400 million Ghana cedis to 469 million Ghana cedis.
Because, any additional money that you pay out, it's first liquidity that you have to raise, and two, investments that you may have to liquidate. So anything that we do has implications. The higher you go, the more stress you put on the fund.
On some investments made by the trust, Director General John Ofori-Tinkran said his outfit is working assiduously to optimize some gains.
What we do then is to make sure that we are balancing all these things and making sure that what we are doing is the most prudent thing to do as far as long-term sustainability of the scheme is concerned, and also not to be completely oblivious to what people need to spend money on. And so that is why we do also the redistribution.
General Secretary of the National Pensioners Association, Stephen Boachi, also welcomed the indexation rate for 2024.
We think it's good for us. It's good for us. Because, it's not whatever you get all the time that you get. People may think that last year we had 25, so maybe 30 or so. No, but it's not like that. Ours is any time at all when you go to your bank, you get the money.
The trust said it is committed to paying legitimate benefits accurately. For Joy Business, James Eshen.
Now, Ghana's economy is projected to grow by 2.8% at the end of this year. That's projection from the World Bank from its Economic Prospect Report. There's more in this report.
But the World Bank could indicate that economic growth will pick up strongly from what government was hoping to achieve in 2023. The 2.8% being projected by the World Bank shows that for the first time in a while, the bank's forecast is in line with what the government of Ghana is hoping to achieve for growth this year. Target set out in the 2024 budget indicates that the end-of-year growth will be pegged at 2.8%. The report also shows that the economy will pick up strongly in 2025, with growth pegged at 4.4%. Based on the World Bank's report, there are strong indications that the economy may be on that path to strong stability, especially when it comes to growth for this year. But there are also projections that the country may end 2023 with a higher economic growth if the third quarter numbers reached 2%. The economy expanded more than initially projected could come with some benefit for the country in terms of investment picking up and the cost of living reducing substantially going forward.
Economist Dr. Patrick Isuming joins us on Zoom for some analysis. Good afternoon to you and Happy New Year. The World Bank's projection is similar to government's growth target of 2.8% announced in the 2024 budget. Your take on this projection and how significant it is in our quest for economic recovery?
Good afternoon, Daryl, and Happy New Year to you too. Good afternoon to viewers. I think it's essentially the new projection is bringing the bank's projection to what others are seeing. I think recent times the bank have usually been very conservative in their projection about the growth rate, and I think this time it's probably beginning to see that consistently it has under projected Ghana's growth. So it just tells you that it's now what this rate is aligning with what others are projecting that the economy will grow. I think even that is a little still it's a little conservative. You expect that in a year like this, coming from the weakness that we've seen, we'll probably see a stronger growth than the 2.8.
Well, I guess is the government being moderate, the IMF or the World Bank being moderate as well? But, I mean, which sectors should the government focus on to grow the economy? The agri sector recorded the highest growth in the third quarter of last year, but generally, it is the services sector leading growth. What should the government do differently?
I think that the government need to, take a step back and take a longer-term approach to growing the economy. I think we really shouldn't be focusing on marginal gains from some policy measures. We have to have a longer-term strategy for transforming the economy. I think it's good that agric is doing well, but there's a lot more that could be done. And then also strengthening the linkages of the real sector, especially with the mining sector, the small-scale mining, and then the oil sector. I think there's a lot of room, there are a lot of things government can do to leverage growth in the agri sector, but also the recent boom in the mining. I think at the moment, the mineral economy still sits as an enclave. We are not doing enough processing of some of the minerals. We are not doing enough value addition within the country. So if we do all of that, we begin to see some more robust growth.
Yeah, and industry has been disappointing over the last year, and that should be a matter of concern if we really want to grow the economy.
It's very concerning. I think when the first quarter growth was released, and it looked way higher than projected, it really masked some fundamental problems in the economy. Because when you look at the segregation by the four primary economic agents, household consumption, business investment, government expenditures, and net export, you saw that the business investment was negative. So you begin to see that going forward, this was going to hurt the economy. So it was no surprise that when the third quarter number came out, you begin to see that the growth was slowing down. So the second quarter is slowed down some marginally from the first quarter, and then we saw a much more substantial slowdown. So I think that it is worrying but not surprising. I think if you look at the measures that the government have undertaken in the IMF program, you begin to see why manufacturing and construction have been severely hit, and those are the sectors that have seen. Those have been the weakest sectors in the year so far.
Well, I guess one of the reasons we are seeing this moderate forecast is because global growth is set to slow further this year amid tight monetary policy, restrictive financial conditions, and feeble global trade and investment. Now, according to the World Bank, the downside risks include the escalation of the recent conflict in the Middle East, financial stress, and persistent inflation, amongst others. But domestically, what are the risks to growth we need to be cautious about? I mean, ISA, for instance, has pointed to the elections.
So I think generally the risks from the elections probably come from the uncertainty about what the outcomes might be, and sometimes businesses withholding their investment decisions to see what happens forward. So there's that uncertainty. But don't forget that the election itself generates a lot of economic activity. There's usually a lot of spending from government that filters into some sectors of the economy. So, but we have to be mindful. That's exactly what we also have to be mindful of, that we've paid a heavy price to get the marginal stability we've seen in the latter half of the year. We don't want to spend 1 year because of the election completely reversing all of that gain. And I think the concern is still there, regardless that we are in an IMF program, that the government could still overspend and throw away the discipline, and then we spend another 3 years trying to fix the mess we create in 1 year. So I think that is a big risk. And then the other thing is, the energy sector continues to be a big risk. I think we started the year on the back of seeing some indications that the persistent problems in the energy sector are beginning to get worse. So I think if you don't address that, and then what we are seeing become a full-blown energy crisis, then there's going to be real trouble. But I think that the risk is real. I mean, starting from the end of last year, we began to see some difficulties government were having with the IPPs. And then, the start of the year, we've seen that the energy supply, the power has become a problem. So if we don't address that, then, you're really going to put the growth projection at a significant risk.
I want us to switch topics and talk about inflation. As anticipated, we saw a decline in December 2023 to 23.2%, lower than government's target of 31.3% for end-year inflation. The business community is already asking that the central bank considers reducing the policy rate in line with the decline in inflation. I want to take your thoughts on that. First, though, let's take a listen to Chief Executive of Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mark Bedu-Abaje.
Any reason why the central bank should keep the policy rate at 30%. One of them, the main reason they gave for increasing the policy rate was to tame inflation and bring inflation down. So consistently, they've been telling us that consistently they've been increasing inflation. Even when at the point where inflation was trending downwards, they were still increasing the policy rate. Now we've gotten to a level where from the beginning of the year to now, we've seen a 30.4 reduction in inflation. So there is no justification for a central bank to keep the policy rate at 30%. Recent data indicate
All right, so that was Mark Bedu-Abaje speaking with my colleague Pius Kojibaka on Business Live. Do you agree, Doc? Is that the logical conclusion we should expect?
It's too early for the central bank to start reducing the policy rate. I don't think we're anywhere near that. Yes, the inflation has dropped substantially, and in the last 5 or so readings, we've seen a steady disinflation. You have to understand that 23.2% is still way higher than our maximum, the upper band of our medium-term target, the 6 to 10%. 23% is still more than twice that upper band. And if you're a central banker, you don't really want to be trigger happy and then quickly responding to things. You have to wait and observe a steady trend. So I don't think we are at a point where we should even be contemplating reducing the policy rate. I think the policy rate is going to remain high for a while until we've really come within the target band. And then the central bank gets a little convinced that there might not be any issues coming from the fiscal side. So I don't think the policy rate is going to come down in this January meeting or the next one. I don't think we should be expecting rates cuts anytime soon.
Well, the business community would not be happy to hear this, but thank you so much, Dr. Patrick Esuming, economist. Appreciate your time with us. Appreciate your insights. Thank you. Well, let's turn to other news for you. The National Youth Employment Authority has rolled out a new module to create employment for 20,000 youth in private enterprises. The Business and Employment Assistance Program is designed to provide salary support for 500 cedis per employee recruited by small-scale enterprises who will be expected to provide a top-up. Chief Executive Officer Kofi Ajapong explains the beneficiaries will only be paid after the authority's monitoring system certifies the beneficiaries are engaged. Nanaya Ojima was at a press conference in Kumasi and filed this report.
According to research by the National Youth Employment Authority, small and medium-scale enterprises are unable to employ enough staff due to the inability to meet statutory requirements, among other issues. To support these companies, the authority is targeting an average of 2 staff each dispatched to 10,000 companies who have signed up for the program from February this year. Kofi Ajapong explained further.
Beginning February 2024, that's this year, we'll be onboarding these 20,000 employees as beneficiaries of the Youth Employment Agency, who will be paid every month as long as our monitoring and evaluation team satisfies that they have worked. The recruitment of the 20,000 will not be the end of unemployment in Ghana. But at least, my friends from the media, we would have given hope to some young man and woman and to reduce the growing unemployment rate.
According to Mr. Ajapong, financing for the project is being released by the Finance Ministry. Even before the dispatch of the first batch of beneficiaries, it is envisaged that the program will be oversubscribed. He explains measures adopted to ensure the program is sustained.
YEA has a stable source of funding from the communication service tax, or what we normally call, or usually call, the top tax. As we sit here in this room, the taxes from the calls you make and the data you use all come to the YEA to fund the operations of the agency. We have management board with the support of our mother ministry put together a deliberate policy to direct the use of these funds solely to the creation of jobs.
Meanwhile, the YEA has assured of its willingness to fulfill its mandate of reducing unemployment among the youth. For Joy News, Nanaya Ojima reporting.
You're watching The Marketplace. Time for the Joy Business Advisory Series. In the last couple of days, we've been tackling financial planning, and creating a budget is one of the things that came up in our discussions on planning your finances for 2024. Well, today we're going to discuss effective budgeting from the individual perspective in a tight economy. Happy to welcome Dennis Brown, Senior Manager, Financial Advisory at Deloitte Ghana. Thank you so much for coming to us. It's been a year, right? I mean, the last time we spoke in studio was a year, but I remember that we spoke on Zoom. So let's start with a definition of what a budget is and why it is crucial for financial planning from an individual perspective.
Okay. I mean, in its simplest form, a budget can be defined as a piece of financial document that estimates one's income and expenses, or expected income and expenses. That is in its simplest form. This is what is typically applicable to individuals. But in a more sophisticated manner, the budget can also be used to estimate one's assets, liabilities, net worth, and cash flows. So you can create a budget that is that sophisticated if, you are pursuing a particular kind of goal.
So walk us through the key steps for drawing up a budget.
Okay. All right. So one of the mistakes individuals make when they are drawing up a budget is not to take stock of their financial situation and personal economy. And all they do is just look forward and say, well, I want to achieve this financial goal this year, and so I'm setting out a budget to take me there. Normally, such things becomes just wishful thinking. What you want to do is to assess and take stock of your financial situation. What are your assets? What are your liabilities? What are your mandatory expenses, if you have any of them? What are your income sources and the amount of income that you're able to generate from those? Once you understand your financial situation, which you can also say is your personal economy, you're in a very good position to target properly what you want to achieve with the budget. So that's the first thing you'd want to do. The other thing, or the next thing, will be to look at the general macroeconomy. You operate within an economy. It's not everything that you can control. There are things that you spend money on that you simply cannot control. Prices will go up and you can't do anything about it. So it's important that you look at the macroeconomy and see what's going on, understand and appreciate what is happening in the macroeconomy and factor that into your budget, so that when you're projecting for particular expense items, what you're likely to spend on, you'll be able to do so properly. You may want to also move further deeper from the macroeconomy, and if there's information available to relate what is happening to the market to you. For instance, there's headline inflation maybe expected to be about 15% in the coming year, but you may be in a situation where you spend about 70% of your income on food. Food inflation is not exactly 15%. So if you are going to persist in that situation, you would want to move further down from the headline inflation to look at Ghana Statistical Service, data on what food inflation is, so that you can properly, target. At the end of the day, you want to end up with a budget that is achievable, that is realistic. And that's why you're
I was going to come to a realistic budget and what the considerations should be in drawing up a realistic budget.
Yeah, and so some of it I've already stated, because if you don't start off from what your current financial situation is, and indeed any other known facts that may play out in the near future. I'll give you an example. So your current financial situation, you may know it. Now you want to budget, but your wife may be pregnant now, and you're expecting a new addition to the family in the next 5 months. You would have to take account of that. The baby has not arrived yet, but you would have to take account of that because you are planning for a set time period. So being able to assess your current financial situation, what may play out, facts that may play out in the coming 12 months is very good. It puts you in a position to properly target. Again, understanding the macroeconomic environment is key, as I've indicated. You can't just project things based on what you wish it will be. You have to project based on what the market is telling you is likely to happen. And all of that goes to ensure that the budget that you end up with it's a realistic one.
Does it matter what you end at the end of the month? Because people have the excuse that, well, I don't earn much, so I don't need to create a budget.
I think it's even more critical if you don't earn much to cultivate the habit of budgeting. Because if you don't earn much, you'd want to...
Or I earn too much, so I don't need to buy.
If you earn too much too and you don't do it, you are likely to end up being very wasteful. Even the Dangotes and the McDonald's, they tell you they do their budgeting, and that's why they are where they are now, because they try to encourage judicious use of resources. That's one thing that a budget does. So if you don't earn much, you'd want to ensure you cultivate the habit of drawing up a budget and committing to the budget. It's a difficult thing to commit to a budget, but you would have to scale that to be able to get by and make a good use of your resources.
So what next after drawing up the budget?
Now, after drawing up the budget, it's important you don't leave it somewhere in your cupboard for it to collect dust if it's a hard copy budget. But typically these days we don't have that. You might have some Excel documents where you documented things. You need to regularly revisit it. What you want to do is now track your actual spending and what is actually coming in terms of your earnings as against what you budgeted for, and see at regular intervals how you're doing. You may want to do it monthly, as an individual, because you're not going to take monitoring budget as a whole career or profession, or so nobody's paying you. But at least once a month, you may want to monitor how you're performing when you take your actual expenses and actual earnings as against the budget, and see whether there are some adjustments to make. Let me throw in a tip here. It's very important to note, particularly for individuals, flexible budgets are more effective compared to static budgets. Static budgets are the ones that you've put there and say, I'm not going to touch it till end of year and then I'll check. But, at various times of the year, things may be happening in the market that you just didn't have control or didn't know of from the beginning of the year, which is when you would have calibrated your budget. So you could be saying that, well, I expect inflation to be 20%. Then 2 months down the line, something happens, inflation is around 50%. You should be able to go back to your budget and recalibrate them. Other than that, your budget in the middle of the way is already off, and you're still trying to, achieve something that is not achievable. So it's important to ensure that your budgets are flexible. You can revisit them based on the times that you are in and adjust. And you can really do that by regularly monitoring your budget.
We just have about 45 seconds. You earlier talked about committing to a budget. I want you to share some tips on that. And what are some of the mistakes we make that affect our ability to stick to our budgets?
Okay, when our budget is not realistic, when it's all born down to our desire to drive a Benz at the end of the year, and so we are just going for it. I'm earning 100,000 a year. It will take me maybe 500,000 to buy a Benz, and so I'm just projecting. That's the biggest mistake. No, it has to be something that is realistic. Tips for committing to your budget. The first thing I would say is, find like-minded persons that you can, go along on that journey with. You can share tips with. Sometimes ideas can come from anywhere. You may be paying so much for entertainment. Meanwhile, there could be other, alternatives for, getting cheaper. The same, and also always remind yourself of the bigger picture, the goal, as you get along.
We'll be having you back tomorrow, I think. Dennis Brown, Senior Manager at Advisory Services.
Financial
Advisory Services, Daryl Ghana. Appreciate your time. And that's the marketplace. More news on our website, nigeriaonline.com/business. More on SNIT increasing monthly pension payment by 15% over the nigeriaonline.com/business. My name is Daryl. Kwawu. Thanks for watching.